I I was mostly trained in traditional figurative painting, and that's how I began to make my first couple of bodies of work. These are large-scale paintings that are about 7 by 8 feet, and this is work actually that I had started before I was in graduate school. So as I kept working, I continued to work with some of the same ideas, which include thinking about and reconfiguring mythologies that I was interested in, looking at imagery from different arenas of culture, high culture and low culture, and my interest in the body and the figure as the site of these explorations. I'm going to have to skip through some of these. So I'm going to go to some of the work that, this is the work that, body of work that's in the show. These are digital collages, and collage and appropriation are both core strategies that I use in my work. These images are based on and taken from a series of comic books that are made in India and distributed around the world. Their text is originally in English, and what I have done is used some of the aesthetic sensibility and framing of these comics and then drawn into them my own kind of visual vocabulary and paired that with a different kind of text that I've written. So as you guys can read the text, okay, it's all clear. So I'm interested in the comic form because it is a form that many people across a variety of cultures have been trained to read and understand. So the way in which comics pair text and image is something that a lot of us are feel equipped to decipher because it's a visual form that people have been looking at since they were kids. So I think for me, the accessibility of this form was a way to provide a point of entry for the audience, and then create a narrative that was more disjointed, surreal, and where there's more of a friction between the text and the image that's poetic rather than illustrative. Along with the interest in the aesthetic of comics and graphic art, I'm also interested in mythic, figurative painting that looks at some of the similar issues in a different art historical period. I'm just showing this as a reference to this work to kind of explicate the influences. So I work in this kind of comic and graphic work. I also work in wall installation and drawings. In this work, across my work, I'm interested in figuring out how to provide a point of entry for the audience and what kinds of reference, visual reference and visual experience they might bring to the work that would allow them to enter it or that might influence their own reading. So in these works, these are wall drawings that are very much referencing comic art, graphic art. Also, I'm thinking about calligraphy and graffiti as well. And they have sculptural elements that protrude from the surface. And these elements are frequently comprised of everyday materials, such as on the left-hand side, that's a fishing lure that's hanging off of the wound, and those are marbles and wrapping paper and bicycle reflectors and so on. So Interested in bringing the drawing off of the wall and into the floor. The quality of the excess in the drawing that happens by the sculptural elements popping out and kind of coming onto the floor is something that I pursue because it seems to, for me, to be connected to the idea of the body also exceeding its limits. So this is a two-part piece where this was the, this is a wall piece inside, and then when you walked outside you would see this piece. Another one of the forms that reappears in my work is this form in the bottom right here, made out of yellow laundry rope, which is called a column, and that is a line drawing form that is also site-specific and ephemeral. It's usually done on the ground with flour. And now you can buy stickers, but originally it was done with flour and kind of erased and redone every day. So I like the idea of something that was ephemeral as well as a form that was very culturally specific, but not necessarily the ones that you might see repeated in mainstream American culture. So this is another example of my installation work. And this work was actually based on a character from the graphic novel The Watchmen. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that, but it's based on a character called the Silhouette who was murdered in the story and never really discussed. And a lot of my work is interested in looking at figures that may have been marginal or excluded from mainstream narration of history or literature. So this, just to give you a sense of scale, this is like 15 by 40 feet. This is 10 by 14 feet. They're pretty big, so the viewer would probably come somewhere up to the middle, the eye line. And the work also, the similar ideas are pursued in sculptural elements that become their own pieces. So another area in which I explore this kind of gap between myth and history is through photography. These are a series of, this is a triptych from a series of prints in which I was interested in bringing some of the drawing language that I had been working with into a three-dimensional material plane. A lot of the influences for me and kind of the references range from photo documentary to album covers to National Geographic, and those are some of the kinds of visual reference that I was working with, as well as hoping that the audience would come to the work with. So I'm just gonna go through these very quickly. This was a piece that a photograph that I took with the sculpture of this armor, which I also built, that was based on the Rani of Jhansi, who's a historical figure who was also a symbol for resisting, for anti-colonial action or resistance. So these are, I just brought this up because when I was researching her, these are two of the main images that came up. So there just seemed to be such a sort of disjuncture between each of them and how else she had been portrayed. It led me to sort of think about creating the armor and taking the photograph. The armor is made out of cardboard and tin foil and hot glue and frisbee and yeah, so it's continuing my interest in this kind of everyday materials and bringing them into this arena of sculpture. So.